The Phantom Nuns of Santa Fe. The discovery. The desert sun blazed mercilessly over the archaeological site near Santa Fe, New Mexico, where Dr. Sara Martinez led her team in excavating the ruins of the convent of Our Lady of Sorrows. The nearly 10th century religious building had been abandoned since 1923, its adobe walls slowly crumbling under decades of harsh weather and neglect. Sara, a renowned archaeologist specializing in southwestern religious sites, had been granted permission to explore the convent's foundations before the land was developed into a luxury resort. At 42, she had excavated dozens of historical sites, but something about this place felt different, charged with an energy that made her team unusually quiet and contemplative. "Martinez, you need to see this immediately," called out James Thompson, her graduate assistant from a trench near what appeared to be the convent's former chapel. His voice carried an urgency that made Sarah drop her tools and hurry over. James was kneeling beside a small wooden box, partially buried beneath layers of adobe debris and deserted sand. The container was remarkably well preserved, protected by the dry climate, and what appeared to be an oiled leather wrapping. "He found it exactly where the altar would have been," James explained, his hands trembling slightly as he held the box. "It was buried deliberately, about 3 feet down, wrapped in this leather and surrounded by stones arranged in a perfect circle." Sarah examined the box carefully. It was made of cedar, with intricate carvings of religious symbols along its edges. A small brass plate on the lid bore an inscription in Spanish, "Para aquellos que buscan la verdad," for those who seek the truth. With practiced precision, Sarah opened the box. Inside, wrapped in yellowed silk, lay a collection of photographs and documents. The photographs were in remarkably good condition, protected from light and moisture for over a century. The first photograph took Sarah's breath away. It showed the interior of the convent chapel, but not as ruins, as a fully functioning religious space. Nuns in traditional black habits knelt in prayer before an ornate altar, their faces clearly visible in the sepia-toned image. The quality and composition suggested it had been taken by a professional photographer. "James, look at the date on the back," Sarah whispered, turning the photograph over. In faded ink, someone had written, "Convento Our Lady of Sorrows, Final Mass, October 31st, 1890. Sister Catherine's last photograph." "Dr. Martinez, that's impossible," James, studying the image. "According to our research, the convent was abandoned in 1890. There shouldn't have been anyone here in the..." Sarah examined the photograph more closely. The chapel appeared exactly as historical records described it, but there was something unsettling about the image. The nuns' faces, while clearly visible, seemed to possess an otherworldly quality. Their eyes too bright, their expressions too serene for mortal beings. "There are more photographs," observed Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the team's historian, who had joined them at the excavation site. She carefully lifted the remaining images from the box. The second photograph showed the same group of nuns, but this time they were standing in the convent's courtyard. What was disturbing was that the courtyard appeared to be in perfect condition, with flowering gardens and intact adobe walls, when historical records indicated it had been partially destroyed by flash floods in the... The third photograph was the most puzzling of all. It showed a single nun standing at the convent's entrance, her face turned toward the camera. Unlike the other images, this nun appeared to be translucent, as if the photographer had captured her in the process of materializing or disappearing. "Look at this document," said Dr. Rodriguez, unfolding a piece of parchment that had been beneath the photographs. "It's a letter written in Spanish, dated November 1st, Yoremon 90. She began to translate. To whoever finds this record, know that we have chosen to remain. The world believes us dead, claimed by the cholera that swept through our sacred halls. But we could not abandon our calling, our prayers, our sacred duty to this place. We exist now between worlds, guardians of faith that transcends mortal understanding." The letter was signed Sister Catherine Morales, Mother Superior, and the faithful Sisters of Our Lady of Sorrows. James consulted his historical notes. According to the official records, Sister Catherine Morales died of cholera on September 15th, 1889. Along with 12 others, the convent was officially closed and abandoned after their deaths. Sarah felt to chill despite the desert heat. So who took these photographs? And who wrote this letter? Rodriguez continued reading from the document. We have learned to manifest ourselves to those with pure hearts and scholarly minds. When the time is right, when seekers of truth arrive at our threshold, we will reveal ourselves once more. Look for us when the veil between worlds grows thin. The team exchanged glances, each feeling the weight of the discovery. They were holding evidence of something that challenged everything they knew about history, death, and the nature of existence itself. We need to document everything meticulously, Sarah decided. Full photographic record, chemical analysis of the paper and ink, carbon dating if possible, and we need to research Sister Catherine Morales more thoroughly. As they carefully packed the photographs and documents for transport to their laboratory, none of them noticed the figure watching from the ruins of the convent's bell tower, a woman in a black habit, visible only for a moment before fading into the desert air like morning mist. The discovery would prove to be just the beginning of an investigation that would challenge their understanding of reality and lead them into a mystery that had been waiting over a century to be solved. That evening, as Sarah reviewed the photographs in her hotel room, she noticed something that hadn't been apparent at the excavation site. In the background of the chapel photograph, barely visible in the shadows, were additional figures, more nuns than could be accounted for in the historical records. It was as if the photograph had captured not just the living, but the dead as well. She made a note to examine the images under magnification the next day, unaware that her investigation was about to take a turn that would forever change her understanding of the boundary between the living and the dead. Discover more incredible archaeological mysteries and unexplained phenomena by subscribing to our channel. Don't miss any details of these fascinating investigations that challenge our understanding of history. The University of New Mexico's archaeological laboratory buzzed with unusual activity as Sarah's team worked to analyze their extraordinary find. Dr. Michael Chen, the university's leading expert in photographic analysis, examined the 1890 photographs under high-powered magnification. Rodriguez delved deeper into the historical records of the convent of Our Lady of Sorrows. Sarah, these results are contradictory to everything we know about 19th century photography. Dr. Chen announced, looking up from his equipment with a perplexed expression. The paper and chemical composition are consistent with the 1890, but the image quality and depth of field suggest techniques that weren't developed until the Sarah approached the examination table where the photographs were displayed under specialized lighting. What do you mean exactly? Look at this. Dr. Chen pointed to the chapel photograph. The depth of field is perfect throughout the entire frame. In 1890, photographers would have needed much longer exposure times, and the subjects would have had to remain perfectly still. But look at these nuns. Some appear to be in motion, yet there's no blur whatsoever. James, who had been researching photographic equipment of the era, added, I found records of only 3 professional photographers operating in the Santa Fe area. None of them have any documentation of visiting the convent, and all 3 were accounted for elsewhere on October 31st, 1890. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from a pile of historical documents he had spread across a nearby table. I found something even more disturbing. According to the Catholic Church's official records, Sister Catherine Morales was indeed the Mother Superior of the convent, but she died on September 15th, 1889, as we thought. However, I've discovered unofficial accounts from local residents. What kind of accounts? Sarah asked, moving closer to examine the documents. Letters, diary entries, newspaper clippings that were never officially published, Dr. Rodriguez explained, holding up a yellowed piece of paper. Multiple witnesses reported seeing lights in the abandoned convent throughout. Some claimed to hear singing, specifically Gregorian chants, coming from the chapel during the early morning hours. She picked up another document. This is particularly interesting. A letter from a local rancher to his brother in Denver, dated December. He writes, "Dead nuns continue their prayers. I have seen them with my own eyes, walking the corridors of their ruined home, tending gardens that no longer exist, ringing bells that were removed months ago." Dr. Chen returned to his microscopic analysis. "There's something else unusual about these photographs. When I examine them under different light spectrums, additional details become visible." He adjusted his equipment and projected the chapel photograph onto a large screen. Under normal light, we see 12 nuns, but under ultraviolet light, the image transformed, revealing additional figures throughout the chapel, translucent forms that hadn't been visible in the original examination. The number of figures increased from 12 to nearly 30. "My God," whispered James. "It's as if the photograph captured multiple layers of reality simultaneously." Sarah studied the enhanced image carefully. "Dr. Rodriguez, how many nuns were recorded as living in the convent before the cholera outbreak?" "According to the official records, 28 sisters resided there at the time of the epidemic," she replied, consulting her notes. 28 visibly on the UV light, Sarah observed. "That can't be a coincidence." Chen switched to infrared imaging, and the photograph revealed yet another layer of detail. Text became visible along the borders of the image, Latin phrases that appeared to be prayers or invocations. "Requiem aeternam dona eis Domine," Dr. Rodriguez translated. "Grant them eternal rest, O Lord," as part of the traditional prayer for the dead. The team worked in contemplative silence for several minutes, each grappling with the implications of their findings. Finally, Sarah spoke up. "We need to return to the site. If these photographs are authentic, and all evidence suggests they are, then we're dealing with something that challenges our fundamental understanding of death, consciousness, and the nature of reality itself." James consulted the weather reports on his laptop. "There's something else we should consider. October 31st is approaching, exactly 333 years since the date on the photograph. You think that's significant?" asked Dr. Chen. "In many spiritual traditions, anniversary dates are considered times when the veil between worlds is thinnest," Rodriguez explained. "If these nuns have indeed found a way to exist between life and death, October 31st might be when they're most likely to manifest." Sarah made their decision. "We'll return to the convent on October 20th and maintain a vigil through November. We'll bring every piece of recording equipment we can manage: cameras, audio recorders, electromagnetic field detectors, thermal imaging equipment." "Are we really considering the possibility that we might encounter actual ghosts?" James asked, his scientific skepticism warring with the evidence before them. "I'm considering the possibility that we might encounter something that our current scientific paradigms can't adequately explain," Sarah replied diplomatically. "Whether we call them ghost, residual energy, or something else entirely, the evidence suggests that something extraordinary occurred at that convent." Dr. Chen carefully packed the photographs back into their protective cases. "I'll continue analyzing these images. There might be more layers of information that we haven't discovered yet." As the team prepared to leave the laboratory, Dr. Rodriguez made one final observation. "There's something else in Sister Catherine's letter that I didn't mention earlier. She writes, 'We await those who would understand, who would bear witness to our continued devotion. When they arrive, we will share the truth of what lies beyond the veil of death.'" Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. As a scientist, she was trained to seek rational explanations for all phenomena. But as a human being, she couldn't ignore the growing evidence that they were about to encounter something that transcended the boundaries of conventional reality. "Whatever we find at the convent," she told her team, "we document everything. We approach this with open minds but rigorous methodology. If we're about to witness something extraordinary, we owe it to science and to those nuns to record it properly. As they left the laboratory, none of them noticed that the photographs, safely stored in their protective cases, had begun to emit a faint, warm glow, as if responding to their decision to return to the place where the impossible had been captured on film over a century ago. The investigation was about to enter a phase that would test not only their scientific training, but their courage and their willingness to accept that some mysteries might be more profound than any textbook had ever suggested. October 20th arrived with an unseasonably cool breeze sweeping across the New Mexico desert. Sarah's expanded team arrived at the convent of Our Lady of Sorrows just as the sun began its descent toward the western horizon. In addition to the original team, they had been joined by Dr. Patricia Williams, a parapsychologist from Stanford University, and Marcus Rivera, a technical specialist with expertise in electromagnetic phenomena. The ruins looked different in the late afternoon light, more imposing, more mysterious. Shadows stretched long across the desert floor, and the remaining adobe walls seemed to pulse with an energy that hadn't been apparent during their previous visits. The electromagnetic readings are already unusual, Marcus announced, consulting his array of sophisticated instruments. There's a consistent field emanating from the chapel area that doesn't correspond to any known geological or man-made source. Williams set up her own equipment, sensitive audio recorders, thermal imaging cameras, and devices designed to detect changes in atmospheric pressure and temperature. I've investigated hundreds of allegedly haunted locations, she said, but I've never encountered a site with this level of documented evidence before our arrival. Sarah directed the team to establish their base camp in the convent's former courtyard, positioning their equipment to monitor the chapel, the dormitory ruins, and the bell tower. As darkness fell, they began their vigil. According to the historical accounts, the manifestations typically occur between midnight and dawn, Dr. Rodriguez noted, reviewing her research by flashlight. The local rancher's letters specifically mentioned seeing lights and hearing chanting around. Times was documenting the site with digital cameras when he noticed something unusual. Dr. Martinez, look at this. He showed her the camera's LCD screen, which displayed a photograph of the chapel ruins. In the image, faint outlines of walls and structures were visible, walls that no longer existed in reality. The camera is picking up something our eyes can't see. Sarah observed, keep taking photographs, but also document exactly what you observe with your naked eye. As midnight approached, the temperature began to drop noticeably. Marcus's instruments registered the change, but the pattern was unusual. The cold seemed to be emanating from specific locations rather than being caused by normal weather patterns. Thermal imaging is showing cold spots forming in the chapel, Dr. Williams reported. The temperature in those areas is dropping 15 to 20 degrees below the ambient temperature. At 12:47 a.m., they heard it for the first time, a faint sound that seemed to come from the direction of the chapel. It was barely audible, but unmistakably human voices singing in harmony. Are you all hearing this? Sarah whispered, and the team nodded in unison. The singing grew gradually louder, resolving into recognizable Gregorian chant. Dr. Rodriguez identified the Latin text, Ave Maria gratia plena, Dominus tecum, the traditional Hail Mary prayer. Marcus's electromagnetic detectors began registering intense activity. The field of strength is increasing exponentially. It's as if the air itself is becoming charged with some form of energy. Dr. Williams motioned for silence and pointed toward the chapel ruins. Faint lights were beginning to appear, not electric lights, but a warm golden glow that seemed to emanate from the stones themselves. James, are you getting this on camera? Sarah asked quietly. Yes, but the images are showing much more than what we can see with our eyes, he replied, his voice filled with awe. The camera is capturing full walls, intact windows, even furniture inside the chapel. As they watched, figures began to materialize within the glowing chapel. At first, they were barely visible as translucent forms that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. But gradually, they became more solid, more defined. 12 nuns, in traditional black habits, knelt in prayer before an altar that existed only in their ethereal realm. Their face was serene, their movements graceful and purposeful. They appeared exactly as they had in the 1890 photograph. "My God," whispered Dr. Williams. "They're actually here." One of the nuns, a woman who appeared to be in her 50s with kind, intelligent eyes, turned toward the archaeological team. She smiled gently and gestured for them to approach. "That's Sister Catherine," Dr. Rodriguez said, comparing the figure to historical portraits they had found. Sister Catherine Morales, the Mother Superior. Sarah felt a mixture of scientific excitement and spiritual awe as she led her team closer to the chapel. The nuns continued their prayers, but Sister Catherine rose and walked toward them. As she moved, her form became more solid, more present. "Welcome, seekers of truth," Sister Catherine said, her voice clear and warm, despite the impossibility of her existence. "We have been waiting for you." Dr. Williams checked her recording equipment frantically. "Everything is working, but the readings are off the charts. It's as if reality itself is being rewritten in this space." "You have questions," Sister Catherine continued, addressing Sarah directly. "We have answers, but first, you must understand what you are witnessing." Sarah found her voice, though it trembled with emotion. "Sister Catherine, according to historical records, you died in the 1889. How is this possible?" The nun smiled with infinite patience. "Death, as you understand it, is merely a transition. We chose not to complete that transition. Our devotion to this sacred place, our commitment to prayer and service, anchored our souls to this realm." "But why?" asked Dr. Rodriguez. "Why remain when you could have found peace?" "Because our work was not finished," Sister Catherine replied. "This place was consecrated by faith, by sacrifice, by love. We could not abandon it to decay and forgetting. We became its guardians, existing between your world and the next." Marcus's instruments were registering phenomena that defied explanation. The electromagnetic patterns are creating a stable field. It's as if they've learned to manipulate the fundamental forces that separate dimensions. Sister Catherine turned to trust the entire team. "You have been chosen to witness this because your hearts are open to truth, your minds capable of accepting what others would dismiss. We have a story to tell, a truth to share about the nature of existence itself." The other nuns had finished their prayers and were now approaching the group. Each face was distinct, each personality visible despite their shared spiritual calling. They moved with the grace of beings who had transcended the limitations of physical existence while retaining their essential humanity. "Will you listen to our story?" Sister Catherine asked. "Will you help us share the truth of what lies beyond the veil of death?" Sarah looked at her team, seeing wonder, fear, and scientific curiosity reflected in their faces. They were being offered an opportunity that no researchers in history had ever experienced: direct communication with beings who had crossed the boundary between life and death and chosen to return. "We will listen," Sarah replied, speaking for the entire team. "We will document your story and share it with the world." Sister Catherine's smile illuminated the ethereal chapel. "Then let us begin. Let us tell you of the choice we made, the price we paid, and the truth we discovered about the eternal nature of the human soul." As the night deepened around them, the archaeological team prepared to hear a story that would challenge everything they thought they knew about life, death, and the mysteries that lie beyond human understanding. Want to explore more incredible archaeological discoveries and supernatural mysteries? Subscribe to our channel and join us as we uncover the secrets that history has hidden for centuries. Sister Catherine gestured for the team to sit on the stone benches that had materialized within the ethereal chapel. The other nuns arranged themselves in a semicircle, their presence creating an atmosphere of profound peace and spiritual intensity. "To understand our choice," Sister Catherine began, You must first understand what we faced in those final days of it. The air around them shimmered, and suddenly the team found themselves witnessing scenes from the past, as if they were watching a three-dimensional movie. The chapel filled with images of the convent, as it had been, vibrant, alive, filled with the daily activities of the religious community. The cholera came without warning. Sister Catherine continued, her voice carrying the weight of memory. One day we were tending our gardens, teaching the local children, caring for the sick and poor. The next, death stalked our corridors like a hungry wolf. The visions showed the progression of the disease, nuns falling ill, the desperate attempts at care and quarantine, the growing fear as more sisters succumbed to the plague. I watched my sisters die one by one. Sister Catherine said, tears visible in her ethereal eyes. Sister Maria, who had the most beautiful singing voice. Sister Teresa, who could make flowers bloom in the desert. Sister Esperanza, barely 20 years old, who had joined us only months before. Williams was frantically documenting everything. Everything, Badgering phenomena that challenged the laws of physics. The energy patterns are creating actual visual manifestations, she whispered to Sarah. They're somehow projecting their memories into our reality. As the Mother Superior, I felt responsible for my sister's souls. Sister Catherine continued. When I realized that I too would succumb to the disease, I gathered the surviving nuns for one final prayer. We made a pact that night, a promise that transcended death itself. The vision shifted to show the nuns in their final hours, gathered in the chapel, despite their illness, holding hands in a circle of faith and determination. We promised that we would not abandon this sacred place, explained Sister Esperanza, the youngest nun, stepping forward. We had devoted our lives to serving God and our community. Death would not end that service. James was taking photographs continuously, and each image captured not only the present moment, but layers of the past superimposed on the current reality. Martinez, the photographs are showing the convent as it existed in multiple time periods simultaneously. Sister Maria, the nun with the beautiful voice, began to sing a haunting melody that seemed to resonate with the very stones of the chapel. As she sang, more details of their story became visible in the air around them. We discovered that faith, when pure and absolute, can anchor the soul to a specific place. Sister Maria explained, when her song and our love for this convent, our commitment to our calling, created a bridge between life and death. Dr. Rodriguez leaned forward, her historian's mind racing, but the official records show that the convent was abandoned after your deaths. How did you continue your work? Sister Teresa, the gardener, smiled gently. We learned to exist in the spaces between moments, in the quiet hours when the living world sleeps. We tended our spiritual gardens, maintained our prayers, waited for those who would understand. Marcus's electromagnetic readings were showing patterns that seemed to follow the rhythm of the nun's speech. It's as if their words are creating measurable changes in the fabric of reality itself, he reported. The photograph you found, Sister Catherine said, was taken by Father Miguel Santos, a priest who had the gift of seeing beyond the veil. He came to the convent on October 23rd, Yetos 90, drawn by reports of strange phenomena. When he saw us, he understood that we had chosen to remain as guardians of this sacred space. The vision showed a middle-aged priest with kind eyes and weathered hands, setting up an old-fashioned camera in the chapel. The nuns posed for him willingly, understanding that the photograph would serve as proof of their continued existence. Father Santos was sworn to secrecy by the church hierarchy. Sister Catherine continued. They feared that knowledge of our existence would cause panic or be dismissed as heresy. So I buried these photographs and documents, along with instructions that they should only be found by those meant to understand. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Why us? Why now? Because the world is ready, replied Sister Catherine. Science has advanced to the point where the impossible can be documented, measured, understood. And because faith has weakened, people need to know that death is not the end, that love and devotion can transcend any boundary. Dr. Williams looked up from her instrument. The energy patterns you're generating, they're stable, sustainable. You essentially created a pocket dimension that exists parallel to our reality. We exist in the eternal now, explained Sister Esperanza. Past, present, and future are one. We see the threads that connect to all things, the patterns that govern existence itself. Sister Teresa gestured toward the walls of the chapel, and suddenly the team could see beyond the physical structure. The chapel extended infinitely in all directions, filled with countless souls who had chosen to remain connected to the physical world through love, duty, or unfinished business. We are not alone in this choice, Sister Teresa said. Throughout history, souls have found ways to remain, to serve, to guide. We are part of a vast network of consciousness that spans dimensions. James lowered his camera, overwhelmed by what he was witnessing. This changes everything we know about consciousness, about the nature of existence itself. Knowledge brings responsibility, Sister Catherine warned gently. What you have learned here must be shared wisely. Some will believe, others will dismiss it as fantasy. But for those who are ready to understand, your documentation will be proof that love truly is eternal. The nuns began to fade slightly as dawn approached, but their presence remained strong. Sister Catherine approached Sarah one final time. We have one more gift to share with you, she said. A vision of what lies beyond death, so that you may tell the world that there is nothing to fear in that transition. Sarah felt herself being lifted, her consciousness expanding beyond the confines of her physical body. For a moment that seemed to last eternity, she experienced existence as the nuns did, unbound by time or space, connected to all living things, surrounded by infinite love and understanding. When the vision ended, Sarah found herself back in the chapel, tears streaming down her face. The nuns were smiling at her with infinite compassion. Now you know, Sister Catherine said. Now you can help others understand that death is not an ending, but a transformation. We chose to remain here as proof of that truth. As the sun rose over the New Mexico desert, the nuns began to fade, but their final words echoed clearly in the morning air. We will always be here, guardians of faith, witnesses to the eternal nature of the human soul. The Archaeologists team sat in stunned silence, forever changed by their encounter with beings who had chosen love over death, service over rest, and faith over the unknown. The week following their encounter with the phantom nuns was a whirlwind of analysis, documentation, and heated scientific debate. Sarah's team worked around the clock in the university laboratory, processing hundreds of photographs, hours of audio recordings, and elected data that challenged every known principle of physics. Dr. Chen had assembled a team of international experts to analyze the photographic evidence. These images are authentic, announced during a packed conference room meeting. Every test we've performed confirms that these photographs were taken with equipment available in regions nolente, yet they show phenomena that shouldn't be possible. It displayed a series of announced images on the large screen. Look at this sequence. We have 12 photographs taken in rapid succession during the manifestation. They show the nuns materializing gradually, becoming more solid with each frame. The process follows patterns that suggest controlled manipulation of electromagnetic fields. Dr. Williams had been collaborating with quantum physicists from MIT and Stanford. The energy readings we recorded match theoretical models for dimensional interface phenomena, she explained. It's as if the nuns have learned to exist in a quantum state, simultaneously present and absent, alive and dead. Marcus had spent days analyzing the electromagnetic data. The patterns are consistent and repeatable, he reported. Every time we've returned to the site, since the initial encounter, we've detected the same energy signatures. The nuns have created a stable pocket of altered reality. James had been working with digital imaging specialists to extract every possible detail from the photographs. We've discovered something extraordinary, he announced, pulling up a new image. When we layer all the photographs taken during the encounter, we can see the complete structure of the convent as it existed. The composite image showed the convent of Our Lady of Sorrows in its full glory, intact walls, flourishing gardens, functional bell tower, and dozens of rooms that had been lost to time and decay. It's as if the nuns' presence has preserved a perfect record of the place they loved, Sarah observed. Their consciousness has become a living archive of the convent's history. Dr. Rodriguez had been researching similar phenomena throughout history. I've found documented cases of similar manifestations at religious sites around the world, she reported. Tibetan monasteries, European cathedrals, ancient temples, places where deep spiritual practice has occurred, seem to retain some form of consciousness. The team's findings had attracted attention from unexpected quarters. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a neuroscientist from Johns Hopkins, had joined their research after hearing about their discoveries. What you've documented supports cutting-edge theories about consciousness, Dr. Harper explained. We're beginning to understand that consciousness might not be produced by the brain, but rather received by it, like a radio tuning into a broadcast frequency. She displayed brain scans and neural network diagrams. If consciousness exists independently of physical matter, then it's theoretically possible for it to persist after bodily death, especially if it's anchored by strong emotional or spiritual connections. The implications were staggering. Sarah found herself at the center of a scientific revolution that challenged fundamental assumptions about life, death, and the nature of reality itself. We need to return to the convent, Sarah decided. If the nuns are willing, we need to conduct more detailed studies. This could be the most important scientific discovery in human history. Ready to dive deeper into the mysteries of consciousness and the afterlife? Subscribe to our channel for exclusive access to groundbreaking research that's reshaping our understanding of existence itself. The team prepared for their second expedition with even more sophisticated equipment. They had been joined by researchers from around the world, each bringing their own expertise to bear on the phenomenon. When they arrived at the convent on November 15th, they found the site transformed. The electromagnetic fields had strengthened, and the boundary between the physical and spiritual realms had become more permeable. Sister Catherine appeared almost immediately, her form more solid than before. "Welcome back, seekers of truth," she said. "We have been preparing for your return." "Sister Catherine," Sarah began, "we've analyzed our previous encounter, and the implications are extraordinary. Would you be willing to help us understand more about your existence?" The nun smiled. "We have been waiting centuries to share this knowledge. Ask your questions, and we will answer as fully as we can." Dr. Harper stepped forward with her neural and monitoring equipment. "Would it be possible to study the electromagnetic patterns of your consciousness directly?" "Of course," Sister Catherine replied. "We want the world to understand that death is not the end of awareness, but a transformation into a different state of being." As the team set up their equipment, more nuns began to manifest. The chapel filled with ethereal figures, each representing a different aspect of consciousness, surviving beyond physical death. "We exist in what you might call a quantum state," explained Sister Maria. "Our consciousness is no longer bound by the limitations of physical matter, but we have chosen to maintain our connection to this specific location." Dr. Williams monitored the energy patterns as the nun spoke. "The electromagnetic signatures are incredibly complex," she reported. "It's as if each nun represents a different frequency of consciousness, all harmonizing together." Sister Esperanza approached Dr. Harper's monitoring equipment. "May I demonstrate something that might help your understanding?" With Dr. Harper's permission, Sister Esperanza placed her ethereal hand near the neural monitoring devices. Immediately, the equipment began registering patterns identical to those found in living human brains during deep meditation or prayer. Consciousness creates its own electromagnetic signature, Sister Esperanza explained. What you call death is simply the separation of consciousness from its physical anchor. But consciousness itself is eternal, indestructible. When the team worked through the night, documenting phenomena that would revolutionize multiple scientific disciplines, they recorded conversations with beings who had been dead for over a century, measured the electromagnetic patterns of disembodied consciousness, and witnessed the manipulation of physical reality through pure intention. As dawn approached, Sister Catherine gathered the research team for one final revelation. You have documented our existence, proven that consciousness survives death, she said, but there is one more truth we must share, the most important truth of all. The chapel filled with a warm golden light that seemed to emanate from the nuns themselves. In that light, the team experienced a direct transmission of knowledge that bypassed language and spoke directly to their souls. They understood, in that moment, that consciousness was not merely individual, it was part of a vast, interconnected network that included every being that had ever lived. Death was not an ending, but a graduation, a movement from limited awareness to unlimited understanding. This is why we chose to remain, Sister Catherine explained, as the vision faded, to serve as bridges between worlds, to help others understand that love, consciousness, and existence itself are eternal. The scientific implications were staggering, but the spiritual implications were even more profound. The team had not just documented the survival of consciousness after death, they had proven that love, faith, and devotion could transcend any boundary, even death itself. As they prepared to leave the convent, each team member carried with them not just scientific data, but a transformed understanding of their own nature and destiny. They had witnessed proof that the human spirit was truly indestructible, and that knowledge would change everything. 6 months after their initial discovery, Sarah found herself standing before the United Nations Scientific Council in Geneva, presenting findings that had already begun to reshape humanity's understanding of consciousness and existence. The conference room was packed with scientists, theologians, philosophers, and world leaders, all grappling with the implications of the convent of Our Lady of Sorrows documentation. The evidence is irrefutable, Sarah announced, displaying the enhanced photographs and electromagnetic readings on the massive screen behind her. We have documented, measured, and recorded the continued existence of consciousness after physical death. This is not speculation or belief. This is scientific fact. Dr. Chen had been invited to present the photographic analysis to the International Association of Forensic Photography. Every test confirms authenticity, he reported. These images show phenomena that challenge our fundamental understanding of reality, but they are unquestionably genuine. The global response had been extraordinary and polarizing. Religious leaders hailed the discovery as proof of their teachings about eternal life, while some scientists struggled to accept evidence that contradicted materialist worldviews. The media had dubbed it the Santa Fe revelation, and it had become the most discussed scientific discovery of the century. Dr. Williams had been invited to present her findings to the International Consciousness Research Consortium. The electromagnetic patterns we recorded match theoretical models for quantum consciousness, she explained to the assembled researchers. We're looking at evidence that consciousness operates according to quantum mechanical principles, allowing it to exist independently of physical matter. The Vatican has sent a delegation to study the findings, led by Cardinal Alessandro Torretti, a scholar known for his work bridging science and faith. This discovery validates what the Church has taught for 2 millennia, he stated during a press conference. The soul is eternal, and love transcends death. However, not all reactions were positive. Dr. Richard Hatham, a prominent materialist philosopher from Oxford, had organized a symposium challenging the findings. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, he argued. While the documentation is impressive, we must consider alternative explanations before accepting such radical conclusions. Sarah had anticipated this resistance. During her UN presentation, she addressed the skeptics directly. We welcome scrutiny, she said. We have made all our data available for independent verification. Multiple teams have now visited the convent and documented similar phenomena. The evidence speaks for itself. Indeed, the site had become a pilgrimage destination for researchers from around the world. The University of New Mexico had established the Institute for Consciousness Studies, with the convent serving as its primary research facility. Teams from Harvard, Cambridge, Tokyo University, and the Sorbonne had all conducted independent studies and confirmed the original findings. Harper's neuroscience research had attracted particular attention. We're seeing evidence that consciousness might be a fundamental property of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism, she explained, during a lecture at Johns Hopkins. The nuns have somehow learned to manipulate this property directly. The technological implications were staggering. Engineers were studying the electromagnetic patterns generated by the nuns, hoping to develop new forms of communication and energy generation. The pattern suggested possibilities for technologies that could interface directly with consciousness itself. Marcus had been recruited by NASA to explore whether similar phenomena might be detected at other locations throughout the solar system. If consciousness can exist independently of biological matter, it theorized, we might find evidence of it anywhere that intelligent life has existed. The philosophical implications were equally profound. Universities around the world had established new departments dedicated to consciousness studies, combining neuroscience, physics, philosophy and theology in unprecedented ways. James had completed his doctoral dissertation on the archaeological implications of the discovery. We need to reconsider every historical site, he argued. If consciousness can persist at locations of deep emotional significance, then archaeological sites might contain far more information than we ever imagined. Rodriguez had been invited to speak at the International Conference on Religious History. This discovery validates countless historical accounts that were previously dismissed as folklore, she explained. We need to re-examine religious and spiritual traditions with new understanding. The nuns themselves had become active participants in the research. Sister Catherine regularly appeared to visiting scientists, patiently answering questions and demonstrating phenomena that expanded human understanding of consciousness and reality. We are teachers now, Sister Catherine had told Sarah during a recent visit. Our choice to remain has given us the opportunity to help humanity understand its true nature. Death is not the end. It is a doorway to greater understanding. The economic impact had been significant as well. Santa Fe had become a major destination for spiritual tourism, with thousands of visitors coming to experience the convent for themselves. Many reported their own encounters with the nuns, and some claimed to have received healing or spiritual guidance. The medical community was particularly interested in reports of healing phenomena at the site. Dr. Patricia Gonzalez, an oncologist from Albuquerque, had documented several cases of unexplained remissions among cancer patients who had visited the convent. We're seeing cellular regeneration patterns that don't match any known medical treatments, Dr. Gonzalez reported. It's as if the electromagnetic fields generated by the nuns are somehow promoting healing at the cellular level. The discovery had also sparked a renaissance in spiritual and philosophical thinking. Books, documentaries, and academic papers exploring the implications of consciousness survival were being published at an unprecedented rate. Fascinated by these groundbreaking discoveries that are reshaping our understanding of life and death, subscribe to our channel to stay updated on the latest research from the Convent of Our Lady of Sorrows and other consciousness studies around the world. Sarah often reflected on how much had changed since that first day When James had called her to examine a mysterious wooden box, the discovery had not only advanced scientific understanding, but had given humanity hope, proof that love, consciousness, and the human spirit were truly eternal. As she prepared for her next presentation to the World Health Organization about the healing phenomena at the convent, Sarah smiled, knowing that Sister Catherine and her fellow nuns had achieved something remarkable. They had chosen to remain as bridges between worlds, and in doing so they had given humanity the greatest gift possible, the knowledge that death was not the end, but a transformation into something greater. The phantom nuns of Santa Fe had become humanity's teachers, guiding the species toward a new understanding of its own eternal nature. Their choice to remain had changed everything, proving that love truly could transcend any boundary, even death itself. 5 years had passed since the discovery at the convent of Our Lady of Sorrows, and the world had been fundamentally transformed. Sarah stood in the newly constructed International Center for Consciousness Studies, built adjacent to the original convent ruins, watching as researchers from dozens of countries collaborated on projects that would have been considered impossible just years before. The center had become the epicenter of a scientific revolution. Dr. Chen now headed the Department of Paranormal Photography, where teams analyzed images from allegedly haunted locations around the world. His techniques, developed through studying the convent photographs, had revealed similar phenomena at historical sites across 6 continents, with documented consciousness manifestations at over 200 locations worldwide. Dr. Chen reported during the center's 5th anniversary symposium. Ancient temples, battlefields, hospitals, schools, anywhere that strong emotional or spiritual energy was concentrated, seems capable of retaining some form of conscious presence. Dr. Williams had been awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for her work on quantum consciousness theory. Her research at the convent had led to breakthrough discoveries about the fundamental nature of reality itself. Consciousness appears to be a basic property of the universe, she explained to the assembled scientists. Just as matter and energy are conserved, consciousness too follows conservation laws. It can change form, but it cannot be destroyed. The medical applications of their discoveries had been revolutionary. Harper's research on the electromagnetic patterns of consciousness had led to new treatments for depression, PTSD, and various neurological disorders. Hospitals around the world now employed consciousness therapists who used techniques derived from studying the nuns' manifestations. We've learned to detect and measure the electromagnetic signatures of human consciousness, Dr. Harper explained during a medical conference. This has allowed us to develop therapies that work directly with consciousness itself, rather than just treating symptoms.